Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference channel. We are bringing the VRIC to you each and every week with our series of expert online panels. We have another fantastic one lined up for you today. We're going to be talking about sound money, gold, silver, and all of the issues that we're finding ourselves now in around the world when it comes to a broken and corrupt monetary system, how we might be able to solve it. It's a big topic. I'm welcoming to the show Lynette Zang, the founder and CEO of Zang Enterprises, and Rafi Farber, the founder of the Endgame Investor. It's great to have you both on the show.
Great to be here.
Thanks for having me again, Jesse.
Yes, I've spoken to both of you separately. I've had Rafi on another panel as well on this channel. Always love touching base with both of you. I want to start off with a recent event in the broad market. This has spread to a lot of different asset classes as well, which was a correction that seemed to spook investors over the last few days. Things seem to be slowly ticking back up at the moment, but certain sectors, if you look at uranium, it got completely destroyed. A lot of crying on Twitter about that. Across the commodity space, copper stocks, coal stocks, the energy sector all took quite a big hit. And the Nikkei in Japan dropped a tremendous amount, I believe 15% or close to that in a single trading day. However, gold was one of the assets during that correction and kind of market panic that held its own and barely dropped and has maintained strength since then. I'm wondering if you see any significance to that. And Lynette, I'll start with you.
Well, see significance to the fact that spot gold contract, because that's really what it is. It's not physical gold, which, I checked with the premiums have gone up a little bit, but of course it's a true flight to safety asset. I know that treasury bonds, people were buying the treasuries, especially in the year arena, but for me, that's jumping out of the frying pan into the fire, because the problem is all of the debt and leverage inside of the system. And really what you want is sound money. When money is imploding, when the debt-based money, is imploding, you got to have sound money.
And Rafi, your thoughts on just the correction overall and gold's resiliency. Is that something that you look to as assurance for gold as a sound money, as a flight to safety, kind of a safe haven asset? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm not sure why everyone was so worked up about 1 or 2 days of negative market action.
Yes, me too.
Just the reaction to it, with the exception of Japan, which is pretty exceptional. That's different. But okay, so the Nasdaq went down like 3% or 6% in 2 days or whatever. Well, I don't even remember what it was, but it was some like bad but not like catastrophic number, and then everyone's like making a big deal about it, and that just tells me that people are just getting more unstable by the week. And everything seems to freak everybody out all the time, and I understand why. We're constantly on the verge of world war. Who knows exactly why? I'm in between watching the markets and listening outside for sirens. I don't know exactly when I'm going to get bombed, so it's kind of like I'm not really paying that much attention to how much the Nasdaq moves in a day, but I did pay attention to Japan, and I think whether you understand monetary policy or not, if even if a layman were to look at the Japan's central bank's balance sheet, they would say, "Oh my God, what is that?" And they would know it's not natural. So when the world sees that Japanese stocks just like crash 15% in a day, okay, well, there's something seriously wrong with that. And I've always been saying that the yen is somewhere as a load-bearing pillar of the giant pyramid that we're in, and that falls, that ends everything, I think, as we know it in the fiat system. But maybe I'm being over dramatic. I'm just trying to stay calm.
Quick break here, guys. Today's episode is brought to you by Copernico Metals. Now, regular viewers of my channel will be familiar with the entrepreneur behind Copernico. His name is Ivan Bebek. Now, although a young man in this business, Ivan's already created tremendous value for his shareholders in the past, namely with Caden Resources, which he sold to Agnico Eagle, and Keegan Resources, which became a mine now owned by Galliano Gold. Now, Ivan has surrounded himself with expertise from BHP, Newmont, and VRIC on his board at Copernico Metals. Check out copernicometals.com. Now back to the interview.
What I see is an unwinding, and really when you're talking about Japan, the Japanese government and central bank own most of the Nikkei topics and the bonds. So and the carry trade, I mean, they've had their interest rates at minus for such a long time. They've been in a deflationary period since the early 90s. They've created this whole alphabet soup to manage what's happening in their bond market. And yet, the market dropped like, I believe at one point anyway, it was like 20%. And I was there in 1987 on Black Monday. So I know what that looks like, smells like, and feels like, and the energy around it. And the problem is, I think what we're experiencing right now is a dead cat bounce. I do not think this is even minimally over. It is highly probable, because the indicators that I'm looking at, like monetary velocity and some other things, I personally believe that the hyperinflationary part of this trend cycle has already begun, and it's just not yet visible. And the other thing is we're watching this power transition. And what I mean by this, and this is so critical, what I mean by this is this whole financial system is just a huge Ponzi scheme. And every Ponzi scheme requires confidence and new money. Those are the two things that they absolutely require. And since 2008, I've been watching the confidence, first bank-to-bank confidence and the interbank rates, gone. That was 2008. Central bank to central bank confidence, gone in 2015 with the Swiss surprise. And I can go into anything in more detail. But what was it? June of 2022, I think, where the central banks who had used forward guidance to tell Wall Street what they were going to do so Wall Street could get into position. And they kept saying 50 basis point move on the bond, 50 basis point, 50 basis point. And then they did 75. And so the market no longer trusted the Fed, which I thought was a critical error on the Fed's part, and couldn't really understand why they would have given up that level of confidence. And what we saw with the Bank of Japan's about face this morning, who's really controlling these markets? Is it really the central banks? Because with that decline in, you might recall that since 2008, we have watched the global central banks move in a very synchronized way. But over the last, 6 months-ish or something like that, you've got some central banks like the Bank of Japan raising their interest rates twice. This was the second time that they did that in a short period. I think it goes back to 2007 or something like that, where you see the Fed keeping their rates the same, and yet you've got other central banks around the world lowering the rates. So to me, when I see that the central banks are no longer working together in a synchronized way into an extraordinarily overvalued and vulnerable market, what does that tell you? And with the Bank of Japan doing that about face, because I was thinking, okay, is the Fed going to do an about face? Are they going to pivot? Because when they do pivot, depending upon how much they do it, all that means is a lot more of this, which then I believe will make the hyperinflationary event more solid, right? And more visible for the public that still are not rejoicing because inflation has come back a little bit. The rate and speed that prices go up is a little bit slower. Their incomes aren't keeping pace. Unemployment is growing. Ongoing claims are growing. I mean, yeah, no, I'm not so calm as you, Rafi. But you,
I'm not either. I'm just pretending. Wait,
I
Lynette,
do
where
want
did you
to
get
touch
that money printer?
actually, Amazon, that's where I got it. We're going to be coming out with some Zang Enterprises money printers.
That's great. That's awesome. Wow. Okay.
I want to talk about inflation for a moment and how the average consumer out there is struggling. I mean, when I visited Canada recently, I'm here in Serbia. Prices are much lower here, but the salaries that people make are much lower. So it really is quite similar. But when I was in Canada, I was completely blown away by just the price of food, basic food items, the cost of living. This is happening in the Western world a lot, but all across the world as well. Do you think inflation is going to persist? It's an interesting question because if inflation doesn't persist, it doesn't mean the prices go down. People are already hurting. Inflation might tick down, meaning prices go up slower, which is still puts a huge burden on people. Are we entering a stagflationary environment up ahead? And does at what point does inflation cause a breakdown of society? Because we have seen hyperinflation in places like Turkey, in places like Lebanon, Venezuela, etc., and the impacts it's had on countries like that. Could a similar situation arise in the West? Rafi, I'll start with you.
Okay. I'm trying to think of all the things that you said that I have to answer. So inflation causing people to start to lose it. Yeah, I definitely see that in people's behavior. And instead of talking about people going to the supermarket and being able to buy less and less food, or not being able to pay their bills and buying more and spending more of their income on basic necessities. I see inflation in a more broader sense of everything is inflated, right? And in terms of inflating the money supply, the inflation goes into the school system through student loans. It goes into the medical system through the FDA and big pharma, because they always get the first dibs on government favors and this and that. So the inflation really is not just in the supermarket, it's in academia, which now teaches us that men and women are just a social construct. It tries to divide us and come up with these crazy theories about basic reality is all invented. Nothing really makes sense anymore in any sector. And I think we're all smelling that. And the tippy top of that is the fact that, our food's going to be more expensive. So the good news is that once you can't buy any more food with your dollars, they can't buy any more fake academics or fake doctors or any more weapons for the military industrial complex, and everything has to start deflating. So I'm kind of hoping that happens before war breaks out, because I really don't want to live through a war.
Wow. Yeah, that's a
Lynette,
really,
your thoughts?
unfortunately, I mean, there are many people that are a lot smarter than I am on this topic that say that World War III has already begun in cyberspace. The difference is that the public can't see it, and they need this war visible, because one of the constants in transitioning from one system, financial system, into another financial system or monetary regime is war. And we've got it in spades, but it needs to be visible to the public. And I don't know that I can remember all of that question either, but when you were talking about the inflation and when are people going to give in and respond to it, it's really simple. When people are hungry and hopeless, that is when they make choices they would not otherwise make. And when you see people going in and buying groceries with their credit cards, which just hit another record as delinquencies are moving up, or putting it on those, buy now, pay in 4 equal payments, but this is the way they're buying their necessities, their food and their gas. Consumers are really, really stretched pretty much about as, I think we're very close to that breakdown, because the only thing keeping this whole system together is that confidence. And when you talk about inflation, in 1971, and I was there for that too. I was like about 16, 17 years old. So I was old enough. I didn't understand what was happening at that time. Just like 1971, I was there, right? I didn't really fully understand that we were transitioning into a completely new monetary system. Why would I think about that? I do remember saying to myself, Social Security is not going to be there for me by the time I get there, which didn't exactly turn out to be true because I'm almost 70 years old. However, I think that we are very, very close to it. It's what I am actually looking for, because I do not think, and I could be wrong, but I do not think this market rout is over. We are being told that there's about $4 trillion worth of the yen carry trade that must unwind. So, people or entities going out borrowing in terms of yen because that interest rate is really low, and then taking that money and buying other stocks or bonds or real estate or derivatives or whatever it is that they bought with that money. It's all on debt and it's all on leverage. And remember, with the advent of the global central banks ratcheting up those interest rates and the market value of all of those assets that are in the banking, all of that debt that's in the banking system being so severely underwater. But you had a trend shift, a 40-year trend shift. There has been a structural shift in debt. Well, debt underpins everything. Oh no, this is not over yet. This is just the beginning.
There's so much financial and I was just going to say there's so much financial engineering going on behind the scenes in such a variety of ways. I wonder if maybe I could get some thoughts from both of you on the most egregious ways that things are being manipulated behind the scenes and what the consequences of that could be. Rafi, what are you seeing right now that has you concerned?
How are things being manipulated behind the scenes? Well, I was talking to Keith Weiner about this maybe a month and a half ago, and I was saying, look, we're both Austrian school economists, or not. I'm not trained by anyone, but that's how I think. So I start with first principles and I take logical processes. So I'm asking Keith, well, if interest rates are 5.5% now, then why is the economy going at all? Like, what's keeping it going at all? I mean, because if you have higher interest rates, then banks have to pay more on their debt and earn less on the debt that they own, that they already own, because it's locked into it. That's why the regional banks failed, and that's why other banks have unrealized losses and this and that. But why is the economy still going? Why is this debt train still going? And he said that he figured out playing golf with one of his friends. And he'd spoken to insider banksters, whoever big they were, not exactly Jamie Dimon, but people underneath him, and saying that regulators are allowing banks now to buy basically junk debt or more risky debt, without it being credited as risky debt, so they can stockpile their balance sheets with this crap, as if it's like as secure as treasuries. Not to say that treasuries are secure, but treating bad debt as very, very high level grade debt, which is basically everything they did in 2008. But they have to do this because otherwise everything would slow down and then we'd be at another crash, and you'd have to try to restart the car again, which means print more money. So rather than print money, rather than suffer another crash and another boom in a final money printing round, they're trying to extend everything as it is now and maintain whatever they can on high interest rates by pretending that junk debt is high level secure AAA whatever.
Interesting. Yeah, very reminiscent of the 2008 crash with mortgage-backed securities. Lynette, what are the most egregious forms of financial engineering you're seeing happening behind the scenes that have you concerned?
Boy, I mean, I can tag on to what Rafi said because I'm in complete agreement with him, and that takes us to the real problem, which are derivatives. And all we can see, that's such an opaque market, right? And it's absolutely manipulation and it's leverage, so debt upon debt upon debt. And with the structural shift, I mean, even the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency in the US runs a quarterly report on derivatives in the FDIC banks. Now, in 2013, after what happened in 2008, they didn't change behavior. They changed how they accounted for that behavior, making things look smaller. And yet the levels today are significantly higher than they were in 2008. And what everybody says, meaning the BIS, the IMF, the FDIC, the World Bank, take your pick of any of the biggest banks, is that nobody knows the true value that is at risk. Now you look at all of that debt and we go, oh, that's all bad, it's on the bank's books. But what's worse that we can't see, it's not what you can see that's really the biggest danger, because you can prepare for that. It's what you don't see. And what we aren't seeing are what's happening to all of those derivatives that are based on all of that debt. Because it's the guys that create that garbage. And they say, I read it with my own eyes, right? If we make this stuff really complicated, nobody questions us. Because you go, oh, I can't understand that, but certainly these guys are so smart, they can. The problem is they make it so complicated, they don't even understand it, as witnessed by Christine Lagarde, Jerome Powell saying they don't understand inflation when their task, their job is to manage the rate and speed of that inflation. That's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think they want your average person understanding the system so that when things do fall apart, they have to look to big daddy government to pick up the pieces and help them move on with their lives. We're seeing these situations with debt piling up, and politicians in places like the UK, Canada, and the US are more focused on policing thought crimes. There's a video circulating on social media. Police showed up at a guy's house in the UK for posting supposedly hateful content on Facebook, and this is becoming more and more common. Is this all a distraction so that nobody pays attention to what's really going on and so is not prepared if things do fall apart? Rafi, what are your thoughts there?
Is it an active distraction by a central intelligence that's trying to keep us off the ball? Maybe, but maybe not. It could just be the natural direction that people go in when they lose their minds. And this is just what happens. But either way, it's not gonna, it doesn't really make a difference to me if there's somebody behind it or not. It's all crazy. There's a reason that freedom of speech is in the First Amendment in the Bill of Rights, right? Because that means that the founding fathers knew that restriction of speech was a very common thing, especially when governments that they remember when they were little children or grandparents or whatever, or their grandparents remembered, they would always try to stop speech. So, it's 2024 and it's been about 200 and how many years since America was born? So 250 years later, they're trying to stop speech again. Well, there's a reason that it's an amendment. It's in there. And there's a reason that when we were kids, we were told to memorize the Bill of Rights. And it was like one of the last vestiges of the really great parts of American culture, if I remember as a kid, that they would drill into you the importance of the freedom of speech, right? And then it would be part of like kids teasing each other. I can say whatever I want because it's a free country, right? But that's a good thing. It means that they have it in their brains. So we know that when governments go insane, they go after speech. It's not the first time. I personally, I don't think that it's an active conspiracy by a group of people. But if it is, fine, whatever. I just think this is the end stage of government, and we're there, and hopefully it can just come quickly so we can move on and build something better.
Yeah, I want to talk about that building something better in just a moment. But first, Lynette, your thoughts on all of this crazy ideology being pushed. If you don't believe the ideology, you're the enemy. Is this all a distraction?
Well, the answer is yes. And I've studied currencies and currency life cycles since 1987. And all of the chaos in the different areas that we see today were all there in 1971, and they were all there in 1913. And so what we're really experiencing are, yes, it's a distraction, because if you're looking over here at the war, or you're looking over here at civil rights, or you're hating your neighbor, right? You are not watching them destroy the monetary system. And that is really, so yes, there's no doubt in my mind that it is a distraction so that they can make this transition. And what they do is they try and make it seem as normal as possible so that you don't know that anything has changed, when in reality, everything has changed.
Well, let's get to the light at the end of the tunnel once again in just one moment, because first I want to talk about preparation for, Rafi, what you call the end game of the current monetary system. Lynette, I know you talk about a lot of self-sustaining activities, growing your own food, being prepared, having a bug out house, these types of things. Could you both maybe give me, as much as you're able to reveal, your own personal strategies for preparing for an end game of the current monetary system, and how your average person can maybe take some steps to protect themselves? Rafi, I'll start with you.
Okay. Well, the first thing I do is I pray, because we can't do this ourselves. And if we feel alone, we're gonna act like we feel alone. It's not going to work. When after you pray, I'd say make friends in your local community. Be a resourceful person in your own community, on your block, in your neighborhood, in your city. You don't have to go too far out there. And if you, instead of trying to learn all the skills yourself and having a bug out house, I don't have a bug out house. I mean, I live in a bug out area, I guess you could say, in the Golan, which is one of the reasons why I moved here. I don't want to be anywhere near Tel Aviv or Haifa, Jerusalem maybe, but it's already nuts, so it's not going to get much worse. Um, so make friends, stack gold and silver, obviously. If you have a hobby that is useful, something with your hands, something real that connects you to the physical world, and you want to develop it, now's the time to do it, to take it to a more professional level. If you have a hobby, if you grow vegetables in your backyard, you really like it, expand, get a little better at it, and so you can share your skills. And also calm down. Don't let pictures of apocalyptic fiction enter your head in terms of exactly what's going to happen, because none of us do. Just try to stay calm and be there for each other, and sharpen your skills and learn about your community and make friends.
That's fantastic summary. And yeah, especially on the point about staying calm, especially with social media at this point in time, things get very hyperbolic. People have agendas. The algorithm feeds you fear because it knows it keeps you online. Lynette, your thoughts?
Well, I agree with everything that Rafi said. And I have a personal mantra that I have been executing since 2008, because I knew the system died. And these are all the things that you need to sustain a reasonable standard of living. Food, you want security in all these areas. Food, water, energy, security, barterability, which for me is silver and all of this food that you see behind me, and the skills, to Rafi's point. Food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. And I would say, honestly, that community has become the single most important thing to me, because, again, to Rafi's point, one person cannot do this all by themselves. I've been working on this in earnest. Like I bought this, I was living in a little 2-bedroom condo getting ready to retire when 2008 happened. And so I then bought this property in dead central Phoenix. I got a half an acre. I am not a farmer or a gardener by tendency, but knowing that food becomes the single biggest issue for people as we're going through these transitions, I dug up the lawn, much to the chagrin of my neighbors for many years, and put in an urban garden to feed as many people as possible. And I've done the same kind of thing in my bug out location, because it was March of 2020 where the riots were happening in the Capitol, which is very near my house, and near my children's in a nicer area of Scottsdale and Paradise Valley, where there were riots. And that night I went to sleep with a gun in my bed. I don't want to kill anybody. I don't want to shoot anybody, especially if they're just hungry. You know, I'd rather feed them. That's my tendency. But when that happened, I went, aha, that is the hole in my personal strategy. So you're already in a bug out location, Rafi. I am not. I'm in dead central Phoenix. And so this is close enough for me to get to, but I've put in hot houses so I could grow, because it does get snow, so I could grow 12 months out of the year. Last spring I put in 2 orchards, and I'm prepared. If we had to go there today, I could support a community of 40 people up there with a variety of those skill sets. And I can still film from up there because I have Starlink and I have a studio up there. So that's what I'm doing. But arguably, community has become the most important issue. Because number one, you got to have that local community to establish security in those things you cannot live without, like food and water, you know, some energy. But as important to that, maybe even a little bit more important than that, we have to come together in global community, which is what we're doing right now. I mean, you're in Serbia, you're in Israel, I'm in the US. We have to come together in a global community and create a quiet and peaceful revolution simply by taking this debt garbage that is going away in terms of purchasing power and converting it into sound money. And if enough of us around the world do that, then they're gonna have to, I believe, they're gonna have to give us a seat at the table in this new monetary system, which means I wanna have a say. I want the public to have a say so that we can establish a system that is a lot more fair than the current system moving into the future. Because it's not for me, I'm old. I figure I'll be around another 30 years. But for our children, for our grandchildren, for our great-grandchildren, we have to take back our freedoms. We have to take back our choices. And the way that I see to do it, besides all of those other things, so that you're as independent and self-sufficient as possible, so that should the central banks or the government say jump, you can say nope, because otherwise you're going to have to say how high. We can take that back peacefully by just positioning into sound money and making them force. And we're seeing this happen with the rise of the unions, with the rise in China of the public and protests and the Chinese government change. We just saw that yesterday or today with the Bank of Japan, right? So we can do this because there are more of us than there are of them, and we need to do it. And we need to do it as quickly as possible.
Very well said. Agree on the community coming together around the world as well. Both of you educating people on sound money on your own respective platforms as well, which is fantastic. Now the aftermath, a new monetary system. We all agree that needs to happen at some point for things to improve. What does that look like on the other side? Because obviously a huge impediment to all of this is government itself. Are you both of a somewhat anarchistic mindset in that we need to remove governments and have communities rule themselves? Do you believe there is a place for certain political parties that could actually somehow be benevolent and serve the people, as in when America was first formed? I wonder how you see that coming together. Rafi, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so here I think I wouldn't say I disagree fully with Lynette, but I would put it a different way. That I don't think that we're going to formulate any monetary system after this. I mean, I hope we won't. Because if we go back to what formulated a monetary system in the first place, so people just started trading things for other things, and then, the most liquid thing ended up being a better money than a less liquid thing. So I'm hoping, I don't see how, if after the collapse of the globalist system, we can actually bring a group together to devise a system for people to follow that will be more fair. I mean, I don't think we want a system. We just want people trading freely, and then there's one law, and it's don't steal. I mean, everything else comes from there. And yeah, from there you can build systems around stop stealing. But the problem with our system now is that it's based on theft being an ideal good. So yeah, you can have a system where people steal. I mean, what you do is you punish them, and you make them work for the people that they stole from, or whatever it is. But you can't have a system that is based on the idea of theft as something that benefits society. So yeah, we can't have that system. And after everything falls over, I see communities formulating trading systems. The gold and silver, like if Lynette stacks in her community with about three other people, and you start buying all the land in Phoenix to give people a place to live, and then they start tending your garden, and you start an economy like this. And why why us? Because we're going to have the capital, because gold and silver was money then, it's still money, it's going to be money afterwards. And so whatever system is built is going to be based on that. And so whoever has the gold and silver now, so I guess in this sense, that's right, that yeah, we're going to have to come together and build another system, not literally, but like we're going to have to discuss with each other. And who do we want discussing things? Who do we want discussing this? Us. And the way we can do that is we have money, so that we're the ones who make the system, because we have the money. It's simple. It's that simple.
And Lynette, how do you see things coming together potentially in a more positive way in the aftermath?
Well, if we go back to prior to 1913, right? And this is what I would like to see again. Gold backed the currency, but the public was in control, because if they did not like what the government was doing, well, it's actually $20 bill, okay? They could walk in with this and walk out with that, and gold requires fiscal responsibility. And the public were in control, because if you didn't like what the government was doing, you just remove some gold from the system, and that would create restrictions around what they could do. So to your point, Rafi, yes, everything is built on theft. And if we have a sound money as part of the new money that is convertible, I'm watching very closely what's happening in Zimbabwe, because they're running a real-time experiment right now, trying to get confidence back in the system. But the gold, presumably, that they have to back the Zim dollar, their sixth iteration of currency, and their CBDC that is supposedly backed by gold, it's not convertible. So if it's not convertible, you have no tools to hold their toes to the fire. This new system, if they ask me, and I'm part of making this new system, then I will want the monetary system. I will want gold as a component, and I want the public to be able to convert out of this garbage into sound money. And that, I think, would be a much more fair system, because we would actually have a say in what moves forward, not just, boom, you're in this new system. And we have to do this, because otherwise we will own nothing, and we're not going to be happy. And the World Economic Forum said we need a new economic, financial, and social system. Those systems, I want to have a say in it. And if we don't do something, we will have no say. And the guys that got us here to begin with, this new system, will be set up to their benefit. That's not okay with me.
Yeah, we are going to see perhaps some length of time pass between now and then in which governments will attempt to introduce a new system that is to their benefit, such as CBDCs. I was talking to Peter St. Ange recently, and he reported on a story out of Thailand that the Thai government is now offering free money in the form of a kind of CBDC to try to get citizens to buy into this concept. They tried this in Zimbabwe, I believe, and they've tried it in other parts of the world as well. I believe even in Ukraine at some point. Where do you both see that aspect, the central bank digital currencies, the interference by governments in trying to attract their citizens to a new monetary system that benefits them in the aftermath of a collapse of fiat currency? How do you see that phase of things playing out? And how close are we to an actual CBDC being distributed and accepted around the world? Rafi, what are your thoughts?
I don't worry about CBDC too much, not because I don't think they're trying, and not because I don't think they want to enslave every all of us, and know every transaction we ever make, and that CBDC would be a good tool for it. So I can answer this and to try to parse your language a little bit. You talk about the government creating a new monetary system or something separate from the system that we're already on, but that's not how it works. Right, we're still on in a I wouldn't say philosophical, in a logical sense, we're still on a gold monetary system because the dollar is still exchangeable for a certain amount of gold. I was looking at the $20 bill and it was holding. I was trying to calculate in my head, it would take 120 of those pieces of paper to buy that coin. Right, that's the exchange. Like, you should have to hold it like with a rubber band. That's how sad it is. So it's not that when they introduced the dollar, it wasn't a new monetary system. It was a derivative of the gold that existed. And when they introduced deposits in online bank accounts that are just digital data, those were backed by dollars that are supposedly in your account that you can withdraw at an ATM, which is based on the gold. It's all the same monetary system. It's just higher and higher and higher levels of derivatives about it. So if the government, to bring us back into CBDCs, if the government were to try to get us to adopt a new monetary system, it wouldn't be a new monetary system. It would be the same monetary system as we have now, based on this dollar that we have now, just higher up in the pyramid in the clouds, where nobody would be able to breathe and everybody would be like, suffocating and like having conniptions and seizures. So it might last a while. It might last a few months or something, but the higher we are in the derivative pyramid, the faster hyperinflation can get, because everything is accelerated the higher you go, right? Yeah, I'm not so worried about CBDCs because once we get there, I know it'll almost be over, and I'm not worried about being stuck in a dystopian nightmare of constant theft of everything that I do, where I have no privacy and no freedom at all for years. I'm not so worried about that because there is the blessing of hyperinflation, and it will come, and just have to know about that and be prepared for it and take it positively.
And Lynette, what do you see when you look at the current landscape of governments trying to issue CBDCs and where you see that headed?
Well, I think that's where they want us to go, into a full surveillance economy. We're already experiencing some change right now with the digital economy, where all of you, and I've been talking about this one for years, to be honest with you, but where we are so embedded in the internet with all of our movements, whether we're looking online for something or we're purchasing something, or your zip code tells you where you live, etc. So that, even at this point, if you go to buy something and you're using your debit or your credit card, then that price can change. I don't know about in Serbia or Israel, but I can tell you in the US, the posted price is not always what you pay at the cash register, and they've begun to take those prices away. And so in many ways, we're already paying based upon what the algorithms say that we can afford to pay. But when we're looking at CBDCs, that I agree with Rafi. It's just always a derivative, but I do think that they are pushing us into a new system in that the BRICS nations have been building out this underlying digital system, and the US's SWIFT payment system is trying to remain relevant. And you know, what I could see happening is that they managed to go ahead and build this new infrastructure and test it out so that we do go purely digital. It is a derivative, you're right. They'll keep the names the same so people don't know that anything has changed. I mean, it was still $1 in 1900. It was still called $1, you know, in 1914, in 1971, and, you know, today. So people think, oh, that dollar can't die. But what they can do is they can control its value directly, and they can encourage you to go out and spend it just by pushing it down. That's pushing down the value, right? Negative rates, because they've already gotten all the purchasing power out of it. They have to now attack the principal. That was the test of negative rates. The challenge that they're having is not giving away free money and getting people to use it. So the CBDCs, because people are using it, why not? You've got free money. The challenge becomes when having people say, okay, well, let's put my paycheck into CBDCs. That is where they're having a challenge. So if they create a big enough crisis that can scare enough people and they go, don't worry about it, we got your back, here's a whole bunch of CBDC. That's what they're going to try and do. Force us into it by fear. That's why it's so critical to be independent. So I can say, nah. Would I use them? And heck, yeah, if I could still buy gold with those CBDCs, it's also why I don't buy new gold. I don't buy bullion. I only buy the collectible, because I can see there are so many different ways to confiscate, and they've been doing it our whole lives. So I don't think they're going to stop at the end. And at least in the US, there is historic precedence for that. So yeah, I think they're going to try and force it so that we're in a full surveillance economy. What the government says, the government is primarily concerned and interested in taxation. The central banks are primarily interested in dropping those interest rates and removing principal. None of that is okay with me, which is why I've become my own central bank, right? That's why we have to come together in community so that we can be as self-sufficient and independent, and again, say no. We have to have the safety net around us that we can create as individuals coming together in community to take back our control. And if we don't do that, your kids are starving. What are you going to do? You're going to do anything you need to do to feed your children.
Yes, very well said. And surrounding yourself with a community of like-minded individuals, as you both touched on, I think is very important as well. And the education you both provided here during this interview has been fantastic. Hopefully we can reach some more people when it comes to sound money. Lynette, tell us about Zang Enterprises, where people can find it and what it is you do there.
Well, it's LynetteZang.com. We are basically a gold and silver company, and what we have is a sound money strategy that is based on my studies since 1987 of currency life cycles. Because we want you, it's built in layers. So as this thing unfolds, you have what to deal with it here and here and here. And then the opportunity positioning. Because you should never let a good crisis go to waste. And since this is a wealth transfer mechanism, hey, why not have the wealth transfer your way instead of the way of the 1% all the time? So we help people establish their goals, because that's what has to come first. What are you trying to accomplish? What is your circumstance? And then in every single area of the mantra, we have experts. So in how to start a garden, or how to do food when you live in a high rise, to how to save back water, or, you know, all of those different areas. So that's what we do at Zang Enterprise. We take a very holistic approach, and we try and meet people where they are and help them get to where they want to be.
Great. Well, I'll put a link in the description below, as well as to your YouTube channel. That is some fantastic information for people there too. Rafi, tell us about the Endgame Investor.
The Endgame Investor. Well, it's primarily a Substack, Endgame Investor on Substack. And what I'm basically trying to do is help people understand what's going on from a broad, logical perspective, so that the daily market or the weekly market movements up and down and sideways and gold and silver and everything else, you can kind of not tune it out, but just lower the volume a little bit, and then rely on the fact that logically this has to happen. And once you understand what is going on, in a step-by-step way, then you become calmer about it. You understand the inevitability of it, and you can control your emotions through it, which I think will be the most important thing to get through the end game. So basically, I'm trying to have people come into intellectual terms with this reality, and be comfortable with it, and step by step stack more and more gold and silver comfortably, instead of somebody saying like, oh, I think gold's going up $300 in the next month and a half, and so then people start playing options or whatever. Don't do that. I'm not telling you not to do that, but I don't do that, and I'm not trying to make people do that. I'm just trying to calm people down and have through understanding and making sense of all this. So that's what I do, and my YouTube channel is Rafi Farber. You can find it on YouTube, and my Patreon, which is I teach religious lessons in the monetary system and economics, from both ancient and rabbinic sources, to show you what was happening back then and what was being recommended back then and how it's impacting now.
Great. Well, I'll put links to all of that in the description below as well. It's been an honor having you both on. Very much enjoyed the conversation, and looking forward to chatting again next time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse.